We talked a lot about this, actually. We talked about, yes, that her life ended early and the circumstances were quite tragic, but that she never gave up hope ever. Um, and it felt really important to focus on this part of her life, the end of her life, which I didn't know very much about, and I don't know that a lot of people do. That she was struggling a great deal financially and physically, and having difficulty finding work and things like that. It's in understanding those things that you come to really appreciate how extraordinary she is. The things that she was grappling with and the things she had to overcome in order to keep delivering on the level that people had come to expect from her for generations. It kind of highlights that she's so much more than just iconic.
I do think Mickey idolized her before he ever knew her, and then suddenly he's sort of in this relationship with her, and suddenly we're getting married, and he is in a little over his head, but he's kind of ready for the ride, you know. So like for me, for sort of the prep of this was kind of just to fall in love with Judy Garland, which was not too hard, you know. I just kind of watched a lot of Judy Garland movies, and it's sort of like you watch a few and you're like, oh, okay, I get it, you know. And I think he maybe felt a little out of his league and a little like he kind of had to try to prove himself worthy of being in this relationship, and so I think that was part of the impetus to like, you know, make these movie theaters or like be a mover and a shaker and make stuff happen. And in real life, to some degree, he did. Like he was kind of her manager, and I think like financially sort of helped sort of figure out some stuff. But he's also imperfect, and I think messed up a lot. And it was messy and human.
Well, I suppose that in a way that she didn't have a childhood, or she didn't have a childhood that we could recognise, and that she was, born onto the stage practically, and then was part of the studio system from a very, very young age, and obviously had lots of glory and benefits from that, but also not the normal upbringing that all of us should expect and deserve, and that really sort of scarred her in different ways for the later part of her life. But I think also that those flashbacks are, on the one hand, recognise that she was very much a victim of a system that was, much bigger than her. But probably also, and I think she acknowledged this, that's part of the sort of strange pact you make when you enter the world of entertainment, that you are property of the audience at some level as well. And she knew that was a complex decision. So yes, she was a victim, but it was also part of her DNA to be a performer and to be out there. I felt like, I think Fred Astaire said something about all his dance sequences, that he always wanted them in one take, and you see the whole body. He said he felt that whenever you cut away in a dance sequence, you somehow lose the awareness, the technical expertise of the performer subconsciously. And I think that's true when you watch those amazing golden age of sort of the 30s and 40s kind of dance sequences. And I think that's also true of singing performances. If you've cut away, maybe there's another take they're using, or there's sort of some sort of patchwork of performance. But if it all happens in one, then the performer's on her own. And so that was something that I was really keen to try on that first big performance, which is hugely, not only technically demanding for the crew, because one person steps into shot and that's an issue, or the lights go at the wrong time, but even more demanding on the performer, because it's a big song. That's like a 3.5 minute song with a big movement through, a big vocal range, big sing. And I think we did like 9 of them, maybe. I mean, like, I remember Renee's vocal coach turning to me and going, like, you can't keep doing this. I mean, they were all the ones that Renee did were wonderful, and I think it's the penultimate one we used. Yeah.
We worked on it for quite some time beforehand to most importantly understand the emotional journey and the telling of the story within that song, sharing that we're not sure where Judy is at this moment in her life and whether or not she will succeed at this moment, and also to sort of animate the struggles that she's experiencing out of the spotlight. And so in the rehearsal room at the piano store, Rupert asked me, just come push on this piano. And I said, excuse me? He said, sing. I want you to sing, and I want it to come from here, and I want it to be the embodiment of her pain at this moment. And the struggle is this piano, and now move this piano while you sing this song, because I want to hear, not you singing a song, I want to hear you struggling in your life. And I thought, oh, okay, I get it. I get it. Now I get it. And then we had another rehearsal space where he wanted the emphasis on the words to be what she needed to communicate to the world, because what she wanted them to see of herself in those moments. And so on those words, which were the big notes in the song, you know, the emphasis at the end of the lyric, a line, you know, he had me throw the chairs and kick the chairs. And so in my mind, all of these things were present without them being there on the stage. They were in the sort of narrative of the performance that Rupert had asked for in terms of, you know, from a storytelling perspective.
When you want an actor to quickly locate the essence of a character, you need a clear physical center, which is, you know, I think what Renee was doing was partly in the back, in her back and her shoulders, but also above all, if you see the footage of her, particularly in that period, it's the mouth. And I think the teeth that we had, as soon as they went in, I felt like Renee's, you know, the center was sort of there on her mouth. That's where she sings from. It's where she gives out her wisecracks from. It's where she kind of indicates anxiety or tension. And so that kind of gave a great center. And then also, because we've been listening to the voice a lot, and Renee had it in her earphones just before each take, there was like you had a couple of trigger phrases.
There was one from her performance on, okay, hang on, let me remember. When she's sitting on the stool and she's about to sing Rainbow in 1968, and she's wearing her red feather thing. I think it was from her final performance in Denmark, and final live performance. And she hops up on the stool and she talks about all these feathers and high heels. I must sit down. Not doing it well now. It's just coming back into my brain. But it would set things in the right place. And there were a couple of other talk show lines that she would say, you know, and words that had this gorgeous musicality to them. And you knew her intention without hearing the word. Just from her inflection, you would understand what she meant. And so there were there was a long list of those to make sure that we were in the right place that day.
You know, I just return to the singing thing. I felt like if you were going to make a movie about, I don't know, like a great athlete or something, and you open with the actor playing that tennis shot or whatever it is, then you're immediately judging them against the athlete that you know. And Garland's voice is so, you know, specific and distinct, although actually the Garland of the period of our film is different maybe from the one that people think they know. So I was sort of interested in that we would try and get the audience to buy into Renee as Judy holistically for a while. And so by the time we get to her singing, yes, there's an excitement about how Renee's going to perform as a singer, but also we've already hopefully kind of believed in her by that point. Yeah, and we shot all the musical numbers pretty much together. I mean, and we had this wonderful community of supporting artists who were like really invested in it. And I think as far as possible, particularly at the beginning, I tried to keep Renee off stage, so their first experience of her was Renee walking out as Judy Garland, looking like Judy Garland, singing those songs and Rainbow, and seeing how moved they were, and actually how I really felt they participated in the creation of what we were doing. I'd never had that experience before, having like really big group of people who just seemed to be, I think they fell in love with what Renee was doing, and
you got a show.
Special.
Yeah. I remember being there for one of those days, and the first time you sang, they spontaneously stood up and applauded. Yeah. And then they did it every other time. The sound guys were like, "So we keep those people from applauding," you know? Like, but they were getting like this amazing free show. They're like, "I'm getting paid for this," you know?
We all had a great time together, because in between shots and stuff, you know, sit on the stage and hear their stories. And some of them had been to Talk of the Town, and some of them had parents who'd been to the Talk of the Town. And we were all just trading stories, and it was evident that we were all there for the same reason. You know, we had affection for this woman, and the whole thing just felt sort of like a celebration of Judy. That was, I don't know.
I think there's a memory of Judy's concerts in that period, which was like the Crays, who were these famous gangsters at the time, sort of went and they met Garland. And I think for where we were in the, you know, not quite the East End, but the east of London, that community really recognises not only Garland being there, but that moment in what London was at that period, and were very affectionate about it. I remember thinking, you nailed that. And like, not compared to by myself, I felt you were in it. Also, because actually, I think I can't quite remember we shot it in sequence, but it's preceded by a big, very physical number. Yeah. So, like, her adrenaline was pumping, even though we weren't necessarily cutting directly from it. You know, what I remember is sort of like, whoa, I've just gone through this incredible number, and now I'm going to settle. And that itself had a calming effect, maybe.
Yeah, for sure. And at this point, because we did film it at the end of that week. There was this relationship between the actors who were in the audience and myself. We felt like we were old pals, and we'd been through a lot that week, you know, the hours and the things and the trying things and all that sharing. I didn't feel alone at all. And it felt like, again, that this was the culmination of that affection that had been actively on display all week. And it was sort of, it sounds so corny, but it felt like we were all putting together this love letter to Judy, and that moment felt like the sealing of it. I don't know, it was just an imagining of what that song meant to her at that stage in her life, and I find that extraordinarily moving, you know. And everybody showed up out of love for her, the crew, and
Yeah.
Rupert, Ben, all of us, every day.